Thank you very much, Mr. There, and esteemed participants. Now, first of all, what's the situation in Sahel? What's the situation? As of course, my colleagues have put across, it's a very dangerous place to be right now. It's a dangerous place. Now, dangerous because, of course, of the violent extremism that, by the way, is not only limited to Sahel, but goes beyond that region. And of course, if you're not careful, it's going to be exported across the borders. Extremism have no boundaries. They have no borders. They have, of course, a region, but they're extremely versatile. And I think we need to look at them as they are. Sometimes we define them by academic standards, but we don't understand what we're talking about, except when we are affected by the extremism. And so these extremisms, of course, have implications, as I mentioned, to Sahel and beyond. They have, of course, political implications, economic, and indeed social instabilities. They completely destroy the environment in which they operate. They destroy the whole environment in which they operate. Now, of course, for Rwanda, and we have been in this business for more than 14 years. And when Rwanda took up this type of assignment, it was out of our own country philosophy. Indeed, a policy that was born out of the past genocide, as all of you know very well. And we said we are going to help not only ourselves, but our brothers across the borders where there are threats or security problems. It's a commitment of our country, not only to the continent, and have done that beyond our continent. Because we know the consequences. We have borne them, we have felt them, we have lived them. Some of us were born in those environments, so we actually know what they are. And so, the situation in Sahel, much as is a terroristic environment, has one issue that we need to be alive to. It lacks integrated and coordinated security development approach. I think my colleagues have put across, we lack integrated, coordinated approach to the problem. By the way, these terrorists are coordinated. You hear them in Mozambique, Sahel, DRC, sometimes in the Middle East, and they are coordinated, but we are not coordinated. We are not coordinated. They have an upper hand in coordination, we don't. At least that's the experience of Rwanda. And I tell you shortly what we have learned as a country. And what's missing, if we are not coordinated, what's missing? And I'll tell you what's missing. First of all, in the Sahel, we have neighbors. They are not coordinated. I think my colleagues have put across. You have coordinated threat, coordinated terrorists, killers, but the states are not coordinated to address the problem. So beginning from there. So there's no coordination. And also, because of that problem, we don't have a collective approach. It's like, it's in this country, it won't reach to me. No, that's a wrong assumption. It's at point X, but tomorrow it will be point Y. They're extremely versatile. And so, we need to have a coordinated and a collective approach to the problem. Not to be indifferent, that is in country X, it won't come to country Y. That's a fallacy. That's a fallacy. The other, of course, problem is we should not define this problem only by military means. That's completely a fallacy. We should not address it by military means. Why? This problem has root causes. And of course, some of root causes, I'll tell you, are governance. Governance, absence of governance, is a fertile ground for extremism, terrorism. Our experience as a country in Rwanda has informed us that where you have absence of government, there's another government in place, and this is extremism. So we need to address the issue of governance in what we call extremist areas, because the absence of government means another government that unfortunately is havoc to everybody. Number two, service delivery. Because of lack of governance, there is no service delivery. People don't have the essential services. These terrorists come in to address that problem, that missing link, that missing state. We are going to give you the services. Of course, they don't. Then, of course, there are socio-economic issues that the government cannot address, and that's a fertile ground for terrorism. Again, this comes in place. And unfortunately, coupled with what I've said up, there is financial incapacity and time response to a problem. We normally are too late to respond to a problem. We have a problem in country X, but our response takes time. But of course, when it takes more time, the problem becomes an even a bigger problem. And I tell you what, we have even a bigger problem. We have a problem of those who have the means but lack the will. Those who have the means but lack the will. And those who have the will but lack the means. So we have a problem here of those who have the means but don't have the will when the problem is reaching them tomorrow. I don't know when. And those who have the will but don't have the means. So we need to have the mismatch. We need to bring the mismatch off, we try to match the two. Those who have the will and those who have the means have to come to the table, because the problem is a common problem. It's an international problem. And so our experience in Rwanda has informed that there's a mismatch between those who have the will and those who have the means. So we have to be coordinated again in that, in that issue. Now, of course, all of us are members of UN. We are members of UN. But our experience in Rwanda informs us that the response of UN to these problems is most times ineffective. And mostly, it cannot give us results when we need them. And I tell you why this is happening. In Rwanda, if I tell you our experience of our country, we have had commitments, of course, to help Sahel, and as a country, we want to do that. Under the umbrella of African Union Fund, we have come on board to do that. And of course, support the effort of the G5 to eradicate terrorism in Sahel. It's a commitment of our government to do that. And this commitment is not simply a hearsay. No, when Rwanda commits, it commits. We commit ourselves to solve the problem, and actually do solve the problem. And I tell you why we have tried to succeed most times, because one, we analyze the problem. We analyze the contextual, why the problem is there, and how do we respond to the problem. And I'll give examples of two of our interventions. There are very many in the world. Let me begin by Mozambique. Mozambique, in 2021, you know what happened. The terrorists had taken over Cabo Delgado, completely a province 3 times my country, the size of my country. And so the officials of Mozambique said, Rwanda come and give a hand. And of course we intervened. We first of all sent in 1,000 troops. It was not enough for that problem. We sent another 1,000. Now we have 3,000. And here we intervened to sort a problem that had been there and had grown to a bigger problem. Sooner could be even much bigger than we thought or we could have. I'm not saying the problem is over, but at least for now it's contained. So I think what I'm trying to put across is that the intervention has to be timely when the problem has taken place. Number two, it must understand the context of the problem for us to intervene effectively. I'll give you the second example where our country has intervened, Central African Republic. Central African Republic. This country, in 2020, it was gone. completely gone. They were supposed to have elections that could not have happened. I'm not trying to boast. If I had not intervened, there was no election. And so, we had again the presence of UN, with, of course, as you know very well, the intervention mechanism, which has to be approved in New York. They intervened, but again, not effectively. So the government of Central Africa approached the government of Rwanda, a government, and we had to send a parallel force. We have one force under UN, whose hands were bound to not intervene when terrorists were causing havoc, and another force that was very mobile. And this force was able to contain the situation, and we had elections in Central Africa. So far, so good. But of course, the question is, these are intervention mechanisms, successful as they are they sustainable? Because I would say only if, again, we are coordinated as international community. If we are coordinated to see the problem as international, not country-specific. And here I must admit that sometimes bilateral engagements are more effective than multilateral. But the two can work together. You can have a blend of the two. The bilateral engagements can be effective because we respond in time to a problem we understand. The multilateral takes time, sometimes with bureaucracy, when the problem is not bureaucratic. And so we need to have a blend of the two interventions. More importantly, as we try to intervene, one thing we must address or understand is the political, historical context of the problem. We don't simply carry our guns and go wherever. No. Back home, we try to understand the problem. What is political, historical context of this problem? By the way, if we don't intervene. That's our policy. If you don't understand the problem, we don't intervene. And I can tell you here that in our interventions, whether in Mozambique, in Central Africa, not a penny has come from international community, has been the government of Rwanda, literal finances. We have not paid a dollar by anybody. We have done that out of our own relation. Of course, we appreciate what the EU has done. They are trying to foot some of the bills in Mozambique. Our intervention has been expensive, as you may imagine, but that is our political commitment to help our brothers and sisters on the continent. And so understanding the context is very important. Most times we address the consequence, not the cause of the problem. We address the consequence, not the cause. If you don't understand the cause, we simply run around without getting a solution. So I think in Rwanda, we first sit down and say, what's the cause? What's the root cause of the problem? Then we intervene to address the root cause. And so our contribution is alive and well. Of course, as I mentioned, we need to be coordinated. It has to be collective, and it has to be in time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think this viewpoint from Rwanda to the problems of the Sahel and West Africa is extremely important and is interesting. But I say that now we have about 14 minutes left, so I think the best way to utilize this time is to ask questions.
Merci, Monsieur de Montbrial. Estelle Youssoufa, je suis députée de Mayotte, qui est un territoire français à 500 km de Cabo Delgado, dans le canal du Mozambique. Je tiens à remercier le ministre Manasseh et surtout saluer l'action du Rwanda. L'année dernière, vous aviez invité le président Kagame qui nous avait parlé de l'opération rwandaise au canal du Mozambique. Effectivement, la situation est stabilisée. Nous qui vivons à 500 km de ce foyer de Daesh, nous vous en remercions. Monsieur le ministre, ma question est simple. Vous avez parlé des causes profondes de la déstabilisation au Mozambique. Quel est votre diagnostic là-dessus ? Et est-ce que cette stabilisation actuelle, vous la voyez moyen et long terme durable? Pour nous, c'est une préoccupation importante, ça l'est aussi pour Total. J'ai défendu à l'Assemblée, dans la Commission des Affaires étrangères, l'investissement de Total dans le canal du Mozambique. La prospérité économique est indispensable, il me semble, pour lutter contre une des causes du terrorisme, c'est-à-dire la pauvreté. Je vous remercie.
Thank you much for your compliment. I think, as I said shortly, we don't define these problems from a military point of view, taking guns and address the problem. We need to address the root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem. And as I mentioned shortly, some of the root causes about development of the area, which, as I said, these studies sometimes take advantage to give alternative to what the government should be done. But having said that, the issue of the government is very important to provide the services I mentioned to the people. And in the case of Mozambique, these studies who roam the whole region, I think it took them by surprise. Let me use that word. Because when we asked to come in 2021, we first of all looked at what's happening in Mozambique, as I mentioned shortly. We had to do our homework back home. We actually found out that there was an axis of terrorists right from up our continent, Somalia, down, then up to Mozambique. So there was a huge axis, and the financing was not even from Africa. When we took over the computers, literature, and stuff, we found out that it was more complicated than we thought before. Financing was not African; they were being financed by external parties, of course, through the institutions in Africa. And so it was more complicated than we thought. But of course, we have learned our lessons as a country. Indeed, we are doing this together with the SADC, indeed, who have put in forces with us and the Mozambican forces to try to sort out the problem. But let me put it this way. As we address the problem in security, we need to address the problem with the economy, socio-economic development. And if we can address that, then, of course, we can hope that that problem will be away. But it can only be away if it's sustainable. The intervention is sustainable to make sure that people go back home now. They are going back home. But home for what? Home for what? And this is what the international community must come in and say, look here, this country, part of the country has been devastated. No schools, no hospitals, no roads, nothing. So we need to address that problem also as we address the security problem. And I think it's beyond Rwanda and Mozambique and others to try to address the problem. I think that's my intervention. Thank you.
Thank you very much.